Hello and welcome to Code Tutorials. In this video, we'll be exploring the Business Reviews Google widget from the key Addons for Elementor Premium plugin. This widget lets you display the Google reviews your business gets with just a few clicks. Not only that, it comes with a variety of style options so you can make those reviews look like a seamless part of your site. The reviews are displayed in chronological order, so however many you choose to show, the most recent ones will always be displayed first. And since this widget is connected to Google Places via API key, the reviews on your site will stay up to date without you having to do anything like refresh them manually. And the great thing about using the Business Reviews Google widget to show your reviews is that you can style them any way you like. And even when new reviews come in, the widget will keep them uniform, so they will all be styled the same. That's not all. You can pick how many reviews you want to show, decide on their layouts and displays, set a character limit for them if you need to, choose whether to display images, and much more. And that's just the Business Reviews Google widget. As you can see from the examples here, you can combine this widget with any other from the key add-ons collection for a smooth and polished design. Whether you dedicate a whole section to the reviews or split it between types of content, there really is so much you can do with this widget. And in the coming minutes, this tutorial will show you exactly what options are included in this widget and how to use them. We'll make a copy of one of the designs from this page so you'll get to see in real time how everything works. Let's dive in. You're going to need a page to work in. I prepared this one. However, before I can add the Business Reviews Google widget to my page, I have to make sure I have my API key. Since Google Places is a third-party service, you need an API key if you want to integrate it with your site. When you have your key, you need to go to the integration page. This is what it looks like. You can find this page if you go to your dashboard menu, open Key Addons for Elementor, and then click on the integration page sub-option. Here you'll see a couple of fields for different API keys, but the one you want is at the bottom and it's appropriately titled Business Reviews Google Places API key. Once you find it, you simply have to paste the API key you get from Google in here and then you can start to set up the widget. To do that, let's go back to my page in progress. Here we are. Let me just briefly mention that I prepared the content you see beforehand. I wanted to have a whole section set up so you get a better sense of what the widget will look like when used in the field, so to speak. So I have an image in the column on the right and this text added using the section title widget. I'll be adding the Business Reviews Google right under the text. But first, I have to find it. Click here to open the element selection. And using the search bar, I'm going to look for the Business Reviews Google widget. There it is. Drag it over to the page. Now, don't panic. This is what the widget looks like by default. It can't display anything until you tell it which business it is whose reviews you want to show. And that's done here with the Place ID field. You can find your Place ID using Google's Developer Console. I have it open in a different tab. This is it. So we're at developers.google.com and we're looking at the section specifically dedicated to maps and services related to them. You can type in this URL to reach the Place IDs page, or you can use the link to it that I've left for you in the description below. If you scroll down on this page, you'll see this section with a map. Simply search for your business. I'm going to use something random as an example. Say this first result. The map will zoom in on the location and it will show a bubble with the Place ID. You need to copy this string of alphanumericals. Make sure to leave out the address that's in the row below. Once you have your Place ID, you can go back to the widget options, find the Place ID field, and paste. I'm using another business as an example since this is just a tutorial. Okay, we can see the reviews for the business in question have appeared, displayed from the most recent in descending order. Now, this default display has the reviews in 3 columns and quite stretched out. I'll be changing that as we go through the options. Speaking of the options, let's see what we have. Here we can pick the list appearance. The default is gallery, which you can see on the right, and the alternative is masonry. With the masonry list appearance, we get review boxes of different sizes arranged a bit like tiles. I'll be sticking with the gallery list appearance though. Then we have the number of columns. We can see there are 3 by default, but you can use this drop-down to pick another number for the columns that will be used to display your reviews. I'll set 1, and that will line up my reviews in a single column. We can see what they look like now. Alright, after this we have the columns responsive option. So in the previous option we set the number of columns that will be shown on desktop screens. This option now is for setting the number of columns on all other screens. You have 2 settings, predefined, which is coded to be responsive and will ensure your content looks good. This saves you the effort of adjusting things manually, which you will have to do with the second setting, custom. With custom, you'll get a selection of different screen widths, which you can adjust one by one. It's a bit more work, but it gives you more control. You should decide for yourself which of these 2 you prefer. Given that I only have 1 column, the lowest number, I'll choose the predefined settings so I keep 1 as the number of columns across all the different screen widths. Okay, next we have the space between items option. It allows us to adjust the space between the reviews. We can increase or decrease it depending on what design we have in mind. I'll set 75 pixels for the value here. By the way, you should know if you're using multiple columns, this option applies to both the vertical and the horizontal space between them. Our next option is borders. By default, we don't have any borders. We just have a shadow cast by the review boxes. However, if you like, you can enable a border. You have 2 possibilities. All, which frames each review box as well as the business reviews element as a whole. You can see what it looks like here on my page. Or you can opt for the between setting, which will add border lines only between the review boxes. Mind you, these borders will appear vertically as well if you have more than 1 column for displaying your reviews. Also, when you activate one of the border settings, you'll reveal a new option for setting the border color. It has this easy-to-use color picker, so you can set whatever color you like with just a few clicks. I'll clear this and reset the borders option as well, since I don't have borders as part of my plan design. Alright, next we have the number of reviews option. As you can see from the note below, the maximum number of reviews that can be shown is 5, and that's the number we're showing by default. I'm going to reduce this by setting 2. There, it's a lot easier now to take in the reviews I have in my section. With that, we covered the first set of options, those that cover the general settings. Next, we'll be looking at the layout settings. The fields here at the top are for replacing the icons used for the star rating. The first field is for the marked icons, and the second for the unmarked. The marked icons are those that represent the filled stars. Basically, they show the rating. And unmarked icons are the unfilled stars. Why is this important? Because the rating is shown by overlapping the icons, so that the filled cover the unfilled. If you add the same icon in both fields, don't be surprised if your rating shows 5 identical stars. And if you're side-eyeing my page with the 2 reviews I'm using, they both show 5-star ratings. We can't see the difference between the marked and the unmarked icons. Still, I'm going to replace the icons while we're here, and then I'll circle back later in the video to show you what a rating of fewer than 5 stars looks like. Now, I mentioned using identical icons as something of a cautionary tale, but that is actually something I plan to do. Rather than using different icons to display the rating, I'll use a few style options we'll see later to show the difference between the stars. When it comes to replacing the rating icons, you can use the icon library. It contains several icon packs, and our default star icon is actually from one of those packs. However, you can also use a custom icon. Go to Upload SVG, then pick the file you want from your media library or upload it to the library if it's not there already. I'll be using this one. Insert media. And then if we look at the unmarked icon field, the icon used here is also from the icon library. When you click to open, you see it's selected. I will be using this for my design. Instead, I'll open the media library to select the same custom SVG I used for my marked icon. Alright, the next option we have is the Enable Drop Shadow. It's active by default and it gets us this shade, which creates a 3D look for the review boxes. You can turn this off if you like by switching the setting to no. Then you'll have this look for the reviews. I prefer using the shadow in this instance, so I'll set this back to yes. Okay. After that, we have the item layout. It lets us choose how the individual reviews we're showing will look. Currently, it's set to box centered, and I'm going to leave it that way while I show you the next few options, and then we'll circle back to see the available layout settings. So after the layout, we have the padding option. It allows us to set how much space we want around the review content, but within the review box. You can set a value that will be applied to all sides of the content simultaneously. Let me demonstrate. If I set 70 pixels for the padding, then I'll get 70 pixels all around my content. And in case you don't want the same amount of padding all around, let me clear this. You can click here to disconnect the fields and enter different values for each. For example, I can just set 60 pixels at the top. Then I'll have a buffer of empty space here and nowhere else. But since I'm happy with the default padding, I'll clear this, connect the fields again, and remove the 0. This will restore the original settings. After that, we have the border radius. It allows us to curve the corners of the review boxes. Mind you, if you don't have a shadow, a border, or a background color for your boxes, then you'll be hard-pressed to see any changes here. Alright, let me show you what the radius might look like. I'll set, for example, 50 pixels, and that will get us this noticeable curve. You can decide if you'd like something more subtle or if you'd like to keep a curve like this. Also, you can delink the fields to set different values for different corners. For my part, I'll clear this to get the default value back. And under that, we have the background color. It's for changing the color of the review boxes. You can use the color picker to set anything you like. I'll clear this since I don't need it for my design. Okay, with that, we covered all the options in this section. But before we move on to the next one, I still have the item layouts to show you. So, boxed centered is what we see on the right. And besides that, we also have the boxed layout. It arranges and aligns the content differently. And you have the same options for padding, radius, and background color that you can use to adjust this layout. Then there's the centered layout. The images are slightly more prominent with this one, and the options we had earlier are gone. After that, there's the info right layout. It places the image to the left and the review along with the rest of the content to the right. And finally, we have the side with image setting. With this one, the image is on the left again, but it's smaller, and the content on the right is placed in a slightly different order. This is the layout I plan to use for my design. Okay, that's the end of the layout section, and we can move on to the next one, which is the developer tools section. It contains just one option. If you switch it to yes, it will show the widget in the form of a standard WordPress shortcode, making it easy to copy for use elsewhere on your site. I'll set this back to no. This is followed by the help section. You'll find some helpful resources here, such as the plugin documentation and the link to our help center, should you need it. And that's all we have in the content options tab. Let's move on to the next one, style. The first section here is dedicated to styling the rating icons. This is where I'll show you how I plan to create the visual difference between marked and unmarked icons. Still, for this, I need to go back to the Content tab and to the Number of Reviews option to replace the setting with 3. Now I have an additional review, and even though you can't see this yet, this last one isn't a 5-star review. So when we start changing things in the icon style options, this review will help us spot the differences. Speaking of the icon style options, the first thing we have here is the size of the marked icons. When I start to move the slider, you can see how they change. And if we look at the last review, then the difference between the marked and unmarked icons becomes very clear. This tiny star is an unmarked icon, and to adjust its size, you need to change the value for the icon unmarked size option. Now, I did plan to increase the icon size, but the current setting is too much for my design, so I'll replace the value for the icon size with 20 pixels. They are still larger, but not excessively so. And I'll change the value for the icon unmarked size to 14 pixels. That will let me keep the difference in size to distinguish the icons and indicate the rating. Another thing you can use to differentiate the rating icons is their color. With the marked color option, we can set a new color that will only apply to the marked icons. So they could look something like this. For my design, I'll set plain black here. There. And we also have the unmarked color, where we can change the color of the unmarked icon. For this, I'm going to set a very light gray, and I have the hex code to help me do that. There. This is what the unfilled star looks like now. And since that was the last of the icon style options, I'm going to go back to the Content tab and restore the number of reviews to 2, since I only needed the third one for this show and tell. Okay, I once again have 2 reviews in line with my planned design. Let's return to the Style tab now. The next section we have is the title style. These options are actually for styling the reviewer's name, so we are looking at this on the page. And the first thing we can change is the title tag. The default setting is H2, and we can replace it with any of the other HTML tags from this dropdown. I'll use H4 for my design. Okay, then we can change the title color. You can easily set whatever you like to change the reviewer's name, but I'm going to stick with the default color. Okay, and after that we have the title typography. It's a bundle of options that allow you to change various aspects of the title's typography. Firstly, we can change the font family for the reviewer's name. There are hundreds of fonts for you to choose from. I have a specific one in mind, so I'll search for it. This is the one. Okay. Then we have the font size, if we want to make the name larger or smaller. I'll set 30 pixels for mine. Next, we can change the font weight. This drop-down offers a selection of settings from thin to bold. After that, we have the transform option, which lets us turn the reviewer's name to uppercase, lowercase, capitalized, or keep it normal, which is however it was typed in. Then there is the style option, which we can use to change the text style from normal, which is our default, to italic or oblique. Next, the decoration option lets us set a line under, over, or through our text. And the last 3 options here, the line height, letter spacing, and word spacing, can help us make any changes to the spacing in our title text. That's it for typography. I'll close this, and then we can move on to the next section, spacing style. The first option here is title margin bottom. It allows us to add space below the title, i.e. the reviewer's name. So we can change the amount of space here. If I start to move the slider, you can see how the space below the name changes. For the value here, I'll set 2 pixels. Next, we have an option for adjusting the space above the title. This here, called the title margin top. It works the same. If I start to move the slider, the space increases. And with this added space, the image gets moved up so it's not quite aligned with the title. And since having that alignment is something I want, I'll change the value here to -11 pixels. And that will get the top of the image to line up with the top of the text. Alright. After that, we have icon margin right. This option is for adding space to the right side of each icon, meaning we can use it to space out the rating icons. Let me show you. If I start to move the slider, the icons spread out horizontally. My design involves keeping the default icon margins, so I'll just clear this. Following this, we have the text margin bottom option. It can help us adjust the space under the review text. You can see how it changes when I start to drag the slider. I think the default gap is fine, so I'll remove the change. Next, we can adjust the text margin top. It's very straightforward. If I change the value, I change the amount of space above the review text. Since the default setting is fine with me, I'll clear this. Then, with the rating margin bottom option, we can change the space under the rating icons, here and here. Let me show you what it looks like when I start to make changes. The icons get pushed up. I don't need this for my design. And the last option here is for the rating margin top, so the space above the rating icons. And if you add a positive value here, the icons will get pushed down. I don't want that. Rather the opposite. I'm going to set a negative value here, -9 pixels, to line up the icons with the reviewer's name more neatly. You can see that they are much better aligned now. Okay, let's check out the next section. In text style, we have options that will help us set the look of the review text. The first option here is text length. With it, we can set how much of the review text will be shown by setting a specific number of characters. This is helpful in case you have reviews that are too long or reviews of very different lengths. I'll be using this for my design. So I can set 160 characters to get much shorter reviews. There we go. After that, we can change the text color. It has this familiar color picker, so I'm confident you know how to effect any changes you want here. Under that, we have the text typography. I don't plan on making any changes here, but if I open them, you can see the options contained here are the same ones we covered earlier under typography. I'll close this and we can move on to the next section, which is time style. The options here are for adjusting the look of this bit of text, the one that says how old the review is. And what we can do for it is change its color. You can easily replace it with anything you like, but I plan to keep the default shade of light gray. And the other thing we can do for the time text is change its typography settings. Again, we have the same bundle of options we've seen before, so there's no need to go over it again. And since I don't plan on changing anything here, I can close the selection. And that's it. My business reviews Google element is done, and I'll hit update to save my work. If we look at the page, this is the design I was going for. My section as a whole is complete, and it represents a copy of a design solution you can find on the widgets page, the one we started from. And here at the bottom is the look I chose to copy. But if we go back to the top, we'll see lots of other ways that the Business Reviews Google widget can be used on the page, and we'll find different examples of how you can style it to work best with your site design. And now that you've seen behind the scenes, you'll recognize this section with 8 reviews is actually made up of 2 separate instances of the Business Reviews Google. So with knowledge of the options you get with this widget, as well as how to use them, you can tell how all these looks were created. And that's the first step to copying them for your site. Should you want to, of course, you may prefer creating a completely unique design solution. It's up to you, and you have the skills to do it now. Hopefully, this video tutorial has answered any questions you may have had about the Business Reviews Google widget from the key add-ons for Elementor Premium plugin. Still, if there is anything that remains unclear, or if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions you'd like to share with us, please drop us a line in the comment section below. Also, make sure to subscribe to our channel and be the first to learn about any new tutorials and theme guides that we post. Thank you for watching.